Alrighty, so in Ayurveda, food combining is a really important part of cooking. And the idea that foods have not only a dosha, they have like a dosha that they are made up of, or a constitution, but they also have qualities of rajas, tamas, and sattva. So when we look at Ayurvedic food combining, we're looking for foods that are going to be easily digestible together. And these sort of general guidelines help us to create an environment in our gut that is going to be balancing and help us to receive as much nourishment as possible. So we're going to start today just by looking at the different types of proteins that we have in Ayurveda. Many of you know that yoga and Ayurveda is, for the most part, vegetarian, but we do talk about meat proteins as well. So in the protein family, we have dairy, and we have eggs, olives and coconut would also be a dairy or a protein, as well as beef, chicken, and fish. Nice, there we go. And if you are one to eat chia seeds or soaked seeds, you could also add seeds to the list of proteins. So typically, when we have proteins, we are not going to pair them with starches. When we pair proteins with starches, it's very difficult to digest from an Ayurvedic perspective. And so I'm going to have Tara bring out the starches so we can sort of look at them side by side and like compare and contrast, you know, the foods that might go well together versus the foods that might not. So starches include beans, yes, carrots, corn, and grains of any kind.
Is rice a grain?
Yeah, rice is a grain. Nice. Jicama, legumes, rice, and squash. So legumes obviously would be like peanuts, and then rice and squash. So these are our starches. And again, we don't want to necessarily combine these two. So Tara's going to move them away from one another so that everybody can visually see these guys are not really great together if we're looking at creating a sattvic environment in the digestive tract. So we'll go ahead and leave both of these items up here, and we're going to build on what does go with these different food groups. So proteins and starches mix very well with vegetables, and all vegetables, and that would include, so we're going to put vegetables right there in the middle. So that would be cauliflower, that would be your kale, that would be any of those types of things. Peppers, all of those things would be a vegetable. So green leafy vegetables, coniferous vegetables, all of those vegetables. Now, so these vegetables can go well either with our starches or they can go well with our proteins, but the idea is that proteins and starches don't necessarily mix. Now, fruits are in a whole other category by themselves. And so I'll have Tara remove our food groups right now so that we can see that fruits don't really go with these food groups. Fruits are in a whole group by themselves, and actually fruits are broken down into 3 different types of fruit. They're broken down into acidic fruits, subacidic fruits, and sweet fruits. So for our acidic fruits, we have citrus and sour fruits, plums, strawberries, and pineapples. For our subacidic fruits, we have apples, pears, apricots and peaches, grapes and cherries, mangoes, and papaya. Now, sweet fruits are in a category all by themselves. Sweet fruits include bananas, figs and prunes, raisins, dates, and persimmons. And sweet fruits need to be eaten in isolation. So we would never eat, or I say ideally, we wouldn't be eating a banana with anything else. You would eat the banana, and then several hours later, once the banana had digested, you would then eat, you know, your protein and your vegetable, or you would eat your vegetable and your grains, but you wouldn't want to combine banana or melon or, you know, sweet fruits with other food groups. And this is really because of the fermentation process. From an Ayurvedic perspective, fermentation is not really the greatest because it's building up gases. There can be benefits to fermentation, but overall, it's not what we're going for with an Ayurvedic diet. Another thing to consider are smoothies. In Ayurveda, we don't recommend smoothies because, first of all, because digestion starts in the mouth. So if we break the food down in a blender prior to eating it, we've already done all of the sort of breaking up of the food that we would normally do in the mouth. And if we're not chewing and creating saliva in the mouth, we're not creating and secreting those digestive enzymes in the mouth that are starting to break the food down as it goes through the digestive tract into the stomach and small intestine. So typically in Ayurveda, we wouldn't drink things that are cold. We wouldn't have smoothies that mixed like fruit and vegetables. We wouldn't have smoothies at all because, again, they're blended and they sort of break down the digestive process. And it just creates a more balanced environment for our bodies. Are there any questions about food combining?
Okay, Mackenzie says, what about only fruit drinks?
So only fruit drinks, if the fruit was like only orange juice, or if the fruit was orange juice and other citrus fruits, or if it was apple juice, right, then it's fine. But we don't mix the fruits. So for example, sweet fruits and acidic fruits wouldn't mix. Acidic fruits and mild acidic fruits wouldn't mix. So we're always sort of keeping fruits in isolation so they don't activate anything that would cause like an upset or fermentation in the gut. So I thought carrot and squash was vegetables. They're considered, at least in our resources, they're considered to be starches. Carrots are starches, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So no mixed fruit smoothies. Yep. Essentially, again, from an Ayurvedic perspective, yes, no mixed fruit smoothies. Or like a banana with, you know, like spinach and kale and stuff like that is not the best choice from an Ayurvedic perspective, right? And remember, this is just one perspective on health and nutrition. And for those of you guys who are in yoga therapy, we have to be real careful because we don't want to ever tell people what to eat. That's outside of the scope of work. So if we're working with a client and our clients are asking for nutritional guidance from us, you know, we need to really stay in our lane. If we are not a licensed nutritionist, or if we're not a certified dietitian, or whatever the designation is, I may be mixing those up, but if we're not actually trained in nutrition, then we really shouldn't be giving that advice. So it's outside of the scope of our work. But what we can do is we can say, hey, here's a really good resource for you to check in with. Here's a good resource for you to look at and sort of tease out what foods might be best for you based on your constitution. From an Ayurvedic perspective, you know, we can create a sattvic diet by first eating for our dosha, secondly, eating seasonal foods that are in season, and thirdly, by the foods and the way we combine the foods together. That would create a sattvic diet. Yeah, bananas blended with anything would not be ideal. When I learned about Ayurvedic food combining, really they said hard stop. Bananas and melons should not be eaten with anything. So not in smoothies, not in cakes, not in cookies, not in breads, not in anything that they should be eaten in isolation. Oh,
banana bread.
Bummer, I know, bummer. Yeah, for sure, for sure. But again, these are only suggestions from an Ayurvedic perspective. And you know, we all know our body best. And ultimately, when we are working with a client in yoga therapy or even private yoga, we're not there to tell them what to do. We're there to give them resources and empower themselves to know their body a little bit more intimately, right? So if they, you know, are experiencing, for example, when I eat smoothies, I love smoothies, but I always have an upset stomach. I get real vata, and it's either like constipation or maybe there's like a little bit of gas. And it's really based on the fact that my body, my pitta constitution, can't handle the cold and can't handle the combination of banana and vegetable, and it just upsets my stomach. But if it works for you and your stomach and your diet, I say go with your gut, right? Do what feels good for you. These are just general guidelines based on principles within Ayurveda. Any other questions, comments about food combining? I've never tried blended watermelon, Frankie. I'm gonna have to do that. That sounds delicious. That sounds really good. All righty. No other questions about food combining? All righty. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna turn our attention over to the stove. All right, so we're gonna be talking about some basic Ayurvedic dishes today, and one of my go-tos is khichdi. Khichdi is really just really nice on the gut. It helps to rebalance. If you're experiencing any vata, constipation, diarrhea, any upset stomach, you know, khichdi can be really beneficial to get you back on track. And in fact, a lot of times before people go to participate in panchakarma, which is like a prescribed Ayurvedic treatment, it's 5 different Ayurvedic treatments. Before people go to participate in panchakarma, many times they do an Ayurvedic cleanse, which consists of khichdi for 5 to 7 days. And during an Ayurvedic cleanse, all you are eating is khichdi. So like really there's this emphasis on nourishing, warm, kapha, nutrient-rich foods. Lentils are seen to be one of the most nutrient-rich foods that we have from a botanical standpoint, from a botanist standpoint. It encapsulates all of the nutrients that our body needs. So when you pair lentils with, you know, certain spices and some rice, you really do get a very balanced meal. Khichdi is also used postpartum when after women deliver. There's a prescribed diet for people who have just given birth, for women who have just given birth. And it includes khichdi and various different practices. It includes ghee in like your teas and warm water, etc. Again, to help the mother to replenish her nutrients. There's a lot of nutrient depletion when we give birth, when we have children. So maintaining an Ayurvedic diet 40 days postpartum can be really beneficial to mamas after they have babies. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about is ghee. So we have taken and we've made our own ghee. And so when we make ghee, we're going to get organic butter, and it's unsalted organic butter. And then we basically take this butter and we put it in a saucepan. And so I've already done that. And I basically created like half of ghee is what I've done. And I brought the butter to a simmer. And I'm going to go ahead and just finish it up right now for you guys. So I brought the butter to a simmer. And then once the butter sort of comes to a rolling boil, you take it off the heat and allow it to clarify. So all of the milk solids will fall out and you'll be left with the clarified butter that is remaining. And so ghee can be really beneficial, not only for our digestive tract, but even for the joints. Like Ayurveda, as you guys have been learning this last week, is very oil heavy. There's a lot of oils used to lubricate the body and the different organs in the body, and ghee is the preferred oil of choice when it comes to ingesting for digestion and digestive health. So I'll let that start to simmer, and I'll talk a little bit about the khichdi. So khichdi, I typically make it with lentils. So we have lentils here. There's a mix of brown and orange lentils in this container. That's what we're going to use today. And we take just plain lentils, and then we take rice, typically basmati rice. So you can use basmati rice if you'd like. You can use another form of rice if that works better for you. And then some people add vegetables. For the purpose of our little demo today, I'm not adding any vegetables. We're just going to go straight up with khichdi. But this is a very traditional, just that have the lentils, the rice, and maybe a few chopped up vegetables. Another thing that we add to khichdi is spices. And traditionally, we're going to add spices like turmeric is one of the spices that we're going to add. We're going to add coriander seeds, and it's important to have the whole coriander seed, not just the coriander powder. There's something about the texture of the husk of the coriander seed that not only helps with digestion, but it just adds a really nice aroma, and it adds like an element of texture to khichdi. And then we have a few other things. We've got fennel. Yeah, we've got fennel. Yes?
Yes.
And then you can also add cumin, if you'd like to add cumin.
And that's whole cumin right there in the jar as well. Right on the white platter.
Oh, this guy?
Mm-hmm.
Whole cumin over here. And then ginger. Ginger is another one that we add in a lot. Now, another thing that we can add in is mustard seed. Mustard seed also gives it a really nice texture. If you are pitta, omit the mustard seed. So mustard seed is warming, and if you are have a pitta constitution, if you've got a pitta constitution, then you're going to want to omit the mustard seed. If you are high vata, you might omit the ginger. It's just sort of, again, flavoring the khichdi to your dosha is going to help balance your constitution. So how would you recommend what would you recommend for a new mother? Just suggest that there are benefits with khichdi and ghee for them. So Jamie asked the question, if you're working with a new mom as a yoga therapist, how do you handle the dietary stuff, right? And so what I would say is give them resources, educate and empower them, help them to find reliable resources. Biome Botanicals is where I send everybody because it's just very, very, it's a very good resource. We know that it's accurate. We know that they have certain products that are available in the States. They're easily accessible. So that's what I would say, is I would send them to Biome Botanicals. On the Biome Botanicals website, there is, I want to say there's a whole tab about postpartum. So you can give them that link and you can empower them to take a look at it. This is a great question, and I really appreciate you asking it, Jamie, because there is a way to address this without recommending that they eat a certain way, right? So what we can do is we can use our yoga therapy sessions as an opportunity to educate. And what that means is that we say, okay, you've just had a baby. It's, this is going to be, the next 3 months or so are going to be a time for you to sort of rebuild your nutrients and things like that. In yoga and Ayurveda, we look at foods through the lens of these food groups and categories, and some food groups exacerbate vata, and some food groups pacify vata. The process of birthing is a very vata rich process, right? Because we're actually creating a vacuum as the baby comes out of the body. Now there's all this space, right? And we have to reduce that space as the uterus shrinks down. So what I would say is educate and say, okay, this is sort of what's going on in your body. And from an Ayurvedic perspective, you might want to consider, doing a little research on vata pacifying foods and vata activating foods. Even more so if your client is vata, right? And so then you again are empowering them. And if they ask you, well, what kind of foods are vata pacifying? All those kapha foods, warm, easy to digest, soft, grounding, all of that stuff is going to be very vata. And then you can even look at the spices, the different taste, like sweet, salty. You know, what is vata? It's very grounding, it's sweet, you know, all of those components. But then you've given her enough information that she can go and sort of like have a little bit of a roadmap, but you haven't said, eat this, do this. That's what we want to stay away from. We want to stay away from like directives. Okay. All right. Yes. So beautiful. Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. So we're going to move on and look at this. Okay. So now we've got ghee. Okay. So it didn't take long because I got it ready earlier. And I'm going to try to show you guys this. I don't know how successful I'm going to be. I'm going to put it right here. And let's just take that and stick it right here. So here you can see that like there's bubbles on top. See the white stuff underneath? So I'm going to try to move some bubbles out. See all the white stuff underneath? That's the milk solid that's precipitated out of this ghee. So I'm going to take only the clarified stuff. I'm not going to take the bubbles, and I'm not going to take the milk solids that have precipitated out into the pot. So this is the first one, right? Okay. All right, so now that we've got our ghee together, we're gonna go ahead and start getting ready to do our khichdi. I like to grind my own spices. So I have gone ahead and put in my little container everything that I would use. So as you can see in here, I've got a little bit of coriander seeds, I've got some fennel, I've got some cumin, and some turmeric, and I basically took the end of a wooden spoon and I like just beat it up in there. So what I'm trying to do is break open those coriander seeds. I want them to split open. And then I'm going to take some ginger, and I like to take a big hunk of ginger, but I like to skin the ginger. You don't have to skin the ginger. I guess it's really personal preference, but I like to skin it a little bit just so that I have less of the hard skin on the outside. Okay. Well, so sometimes I like to use a grater. If you have a grater at home, you can take a chunk of ginger and just grate it into the pot. If you don't have a grater, that's okay. You can just take and chop up a little bit of ginger and then add it to your other spices as you're going to start to sort of simmer those spices. Now I do like to put the spices in a little bit of ghee, and I like to sort of brown the spices or toast the spices a little bit. I just find that it creates more layered flavor, and I like it. I like it like that. I guess that's the reason I do it. Tara likes to do the pre-done spices it's from Bayan, right?
Bayan.
Yeah, so Tara likes to use the khichdi spice kit. There's nothing wrong with using the khichdi spice kit. If you want to use the kit, this is a great thing to do. If you have the time and energy to go ahead and crush them, that's fine as well. Again, from an Ayurvedic perspective, we're trying to use foods and spices and ingredients that are at the peak of freshness. So we really want to be able to like take them off the plant and bring them in and eat them. That's the ideal. When we don't have that, of course we can use store-bought mixes, and all of that stuff is totally fine. When we look at Ayurveda and the way they look at food, food is prana. And so food has the most prana in it when it is fresh, like right when you take it off the stalk, that's when it has the most prana. And every second from that point on, the prana is depleted. So the idea is that we eat the food as quickly as possible. Leftovers are, we don't keep leftovers for a long period of time. And if we do eat leftovers, we add something to them to sort of like reinvigorate the prana. And cilantro is great for that. It's great for that. So if you have khichdi in your fridge, you can just chop up a little cilantro, put it on top, and bam, you've got instant prana. So now we've got our ghee over here. So I'm going to take just a little bit of that clarified butter. And again, like I said, I don't want the milk fat, and I don't want the bubbles. I really just want the clarified butter only. I'm just going to put just two teaspoons of ghee in there.
And Michelle, how much butter did you say you put in there to make the ghee?
I put in a whole stick of butter. Tara and I both talked about this before we did this. I'm not a huge fan of processed ghee. So if you were to buy ghee in the store, it's shelf stable because it doesn't have the milk fat. So it can sit on the shelf for indefinitely. The smell of shelf stable, pre-packaged ghee doesn't work for me very well. So I like to make mine fresh. I find that it's more aromatic, it tastes better in my opinion, and so I like to make my own.
So Leonard says, Leonard, there might be a typo, but does the replenish after you cook it? Say I had some oat in my cabinet for a month, but then cooked them, the prana.
Okay, so Leonard asked about the prana. So if I have shelf-stable rice, for example, or beans, I've got these beans here. Yeah, they've lost a little bit of their prana. That's okay. I'm gonna pop these in and I'm gonna cook them. And once I cook them, I've created food that's now digestible. And so from that moment on, they are like the clock is ticking, Leonard. If I had been on the farm and picked these right off the beanstalk and I popped one in my mouth, they would have been soft, right? So when we dry foods or when we freeze foods, we are preserving the prana within them to an extent. Obviously, if you have the opportunity, or even, I guess we could even say the privilege, to go to like a farmer's market or a central market or something like that to get fresh legumes or fresh beans or fresh ingredients, that would be fantastic. But a lot of us don't have that. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen, like a place that you could get like some of these ingredients just straight up fresh, like right out of the ground. Perfect. Yes. Awesome. Okay, so now here we are. We've got our ghee in here. I'm going to go ahead and add my spices. And so I know you guys are not here, but it'll start to be pretty aromatic pretty quickly, adding the ginger as well. Now, one thing we didn't talk about is garlic and onions. Where are my garlic and onions? Well, garlic and onions are ragistic. And in fact, they used to say that onions were even an aphrodisiac, that they would sort of like activate people. And so in the ashrams, they wouldn't use onion, they wouldn't use garlic, they would use hing vishak or hing. So hing is another spice that, again, is very popular in like monasteries and ashrams and stuff like that. Has anybody ever smelled hing? Has anybody ever had any experience with hing? No? Okay, well, that's your homework. Find some hing. Now don't smell it up in your face, I'm telling you. Like, it's one of those things that's like a science project. You sort of open the hing and you waft it your way. It smells like a special kind of mothball, doesn't it?
Hing didn't make the move with me because I don't care for hing. I just realized I thought I had hing all this time. I do not.
So hing, what it does is it creates a little bit of spice and a little bit of heat without having that aphrodisiac sort of effect on people. How do you spell it? It's H-I-N-G, right?
Yes.
Yeah, hing. Hing vishak is another way to say it, spell it. Alrighty, so going back over here, so I'm just creating just a little toast to these cumin and coriander seeds, just enough to start to get an aromatic smell in the room. But I don't want to burn the ghee. I don't want to brown it at all. So it's really just to toast the spices. And as soon as I get that toast and that fragrance, I'm gonna go ahead and start to add my other ingredients. So we're starting to get that here. I'm gonna add a cup of lentils. So I usually add spice as I see fit, like, so it's like a splash of spice here, a splash of spice there. I think on the Bunyan Botanicals one, it says like a teaspoon or something.
1.5 teaspoons.
Okay, so 1.5 teaspoons. Now I'm gonna cover these lentils in this sort of ghee spice mixture so that they really all are getting these flavors sort of married before I add the water. because I want to get those flavors married before I start adding liquid that's going to dilute this whole thing. And so once I've got that done, I don't really have to worry so much about the ghee burning. At this point, I don't have to worry about the ghee smoking or burning because now it's covering all of the lentils. And at this point now I can add my rice. And I do like a 1/4 cup of rice and I just add it straight in. Of course, I still haven't added any water yet because I'm just trying to get everything seasoned. All my dry ingredients are getting seasoned. And so just a few good sort of tosses, and now everything has this beautiful sort of yellow hue to it from the turmeric, and I can smell the ginger and all of the different spices, so we're right where we want to be. So we're going to add 2 cups of water here, and you know, I like my khichdi a little bit more wet. Some people, Tara and I were talking about this, some people like it a little bit more dry, so it's really whatever you like. You can always add water to it. When we used to do teacher trainings here in Austin, I would make khichdi every Saturday morning, and we would have khichdi after practice. And sometimes practice would go long. Remember, Tara, I didn't have to add some water because it was like paste. So, but it does come back. Remember those good old days?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, okay. So now I've got this going. Now, if I was just to leave this on the stove, it would take a while. It would take a little bit of time. But I'm actually going to create a pressure cooker. So I'm going to take the top, I'm going to put it on, I'm going to turn the heat to about medium heat. And then I'm going to grab some cans, all right? And so some of you guys may know this technique. I'm going to set the cans on top of the pot. Okay, looks a little precarious, doesn't it? I promise it's going to be okay. But what's going to happen is these cans are going to put pressure on the lid. And so I've got it on medium heat. Once this starts to come to a boil, very quickly, that pressure is going to start to circulate with all of the other heat that's like going on in the pot. And it will actually cook lentils and rice in like half the time. So I use this when I'm cooking, like if I'm making even chili from scratch. If I was to take these guys and I soak them overnight and then I put them in a pot, stick water on them, put the pot top on, and then I stick cans on there, it'll cut my cooking time in half. So just an interesting little tip for those of you who like to cook.
And then Michelle, I know you said 1/4 cup rice. Did you do half a cup of lentils? Was that
I did
it?
a full cup of lentils. A full cup of lentils, 1/4 cup of rice, 2 cups of water. And there's really no science to khichdi. I mean, at least from my perspective, maybe there is a science that I'm not familiar with, but I've made it enough times that, you know, you can add more water if you need to add more water. You can add more spice if you need to add spice. If you add too much spice, you can always add more rice and water, and that'll sort of like dilute everything a little bit. So there are always options. Frankie, explain that for me.
It was in Leah's presentation that she just did for kitchen preparation, and that's actually hing, and that's how it's spelled, is Hingu, and the nickname in the Western is devil's dung. So
Yeah.
I think potato is the Ayurvedic term, and then hing is probably the Hindu or Indian term, and then the, you know, appropriated term is devil's dung.
Yeah, well, it smells, I really think it smells to me like mothballs is what it smells like to me. Thank you, Frankie. I learned something new today. Appreciate it. So we're gonna let this get going, and Tara's gonna come over here and make a lassi. So lassies are a yogurt drink, and they're super easy to make, and you can make them with all sorts of different types of herbs and fruits and all the things. But essentially, you take yogurt and water, equal parts yogurt, equal parts water, and you mix them together. Today we're going to do it with ginger, so I'm going to be preparing a little bit more ginger for our lassi. Lassies are great for digestion. When we were in Kuwait, they used lassies a lot, like in the middle of the day after siesta, just to sort of, I guess, you know, get everybody back in the flow of things before moving into dinner. Overseas and in Kuwait, especially in the Middle East, they eat really, really late at night. So you'd have lunch and then you'd go to sleep until 4 and everything shuts down, right? And then you wake up at 4 and everything opens back up and you eat at like 9. So lassis are great because they sort of balance some of that vata. You going long periods of time without eating creates, again, gas because, the body is trying to digest and there's nothing to digest. It also creates like some space in the colon because, maybe I have some food that has processed through and then I haven't eaten anything for a long period of time. So now I've got space and air in the colon. So lassis can just help to balance that a little bit. And good source of probiotic as well. So a little bit of ginger here. And Tara's going to add some yogurt and some water. And then there's 2 different ways to look at this. So you can use pure cane sugar when you're making lassis, or you can use honey when you're making lassis. I know that there are a lot of different sort of diets out there right now, a lot of different ways to eat. It's important to note that in Ayurvedic, fad diets, or when I say fad diets, really any diet, I shouldn't say fad diet, I should say any diet is not really ideal in Ayurveda. We want consistency, right? So the idea is that we eat a balanced, nutritious, prana-rich, sattvic diet for our constitution day in and day out. And that these other sort of like deviants away from that, where we're going all protein, or we're going high fat, or we're going, no carb, that they can add to imbalances. So it's just something to think about. Again, it's a different perspective. It's not right, it's not wrong, it's just a different perspective.
So what is our proportion? How much yogurt to water ratio?
So I'd say like that's good, and then water. So we've got probably half a cup in here of yogurt. And then we're going to do a half a cup of water as well.
We're using a food processor today. We don't have a blender handy. This is an awesome little food processor.
And again, so just to note, we in America, we love our cold water and our ice. But from an Ayurvedic standpoint, we wouldn't be chilling water. We would have water in a pitcher. Typically, it would be copper, because copper has a antibacterial, antimicrobial property to it. So you would put water in like a copper cup or a copper pitcher, and then the next day when you wake up, it's ready for you to drink, right?
And then how much sugar?
Like a tablespoon.
Tablespoon.
Make it sweet.
Okay.
There you go. Damn. All right. So while Tara's doing that, we've already got a good boil going over here with the khichdi. So I probably anticipate like maybe another 15 minutes before it's ready to be pulled and sampled. So Tara will get that going. Are there any questions as we move forward? Yeah, I would say that if you use a thinner yogurt, then yes, you could use less water. Yeah, if you're using like a Greek yogurt or something, it's going to be more water.
Okay.
Yeah.
You think the ginger's all good to go?
I do it a little bit more.
Okay. Smell the ginger.
So we are going to show you how to separate the clarified butter in between. So now we made the lassi. Let's show you how to clarify the butter. All right. So here, I'm going to just do it in this so that you guys can see.
Do you need oven mitt?
And so I let it cool. So Letty asked for us to show this. So I let it cool so I can see that those milk solids are really at the bottom. And it's really fascinating because they actually, it's almost like little pearls. So they really are at the bottom. And so I am going to take a spoon and I'm just going to hold back any sort of bubbles or foam, just like if I was, you know, and we'll get it somewhat right, right? There we go. There we go. We're getting a little bit of bubble in there, but not so much. Not so much that it's going to hurt anything. What I am going to show you is all the milk solids at the bottom.
Oh, Bert says, can you use a mesh strainer or would that not work?
You know, I don't think a mesh strainer would work. I think ideally you would want it to be super cool. Okay, so I'm doing this a little warm. Ideally, you'd want it to be super cool. And even what I could do is I could actually leave this sitting right here. By the end of our little presentation, I could probably skim off any remaining bubbles that ended up on top. But you guys are going to see in just a second all the junk that's left. So I got most of it, and I also got some on the counter. That's awesome. But this, can you see? That's all the junk that's left in there. So that's the milk solids that we didn't want. Yeah? Any questions about that? Cheesecloth, I think it would be a little bit too, like this stuff is really, really fine. So I would say that I would cool it more and then skim off any of the bubbles, and then all of the milk solid will be on the ground already, or not on the ground, in the bottom of the pot, and then that should be pretty easy. If you don't let the ghee cool to solid, maybe on a strainer, but not cloth, it'll soak up too much oil. Yeah, I agree. All right, so over here we've got a pressure cooker sensation going on, and this is thickened up quite a bit. So, yeah, that's nice. So this is thickened up quite a bit, maybe another couple minutes, maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes tops. When the lentils start to split, then that's when I typically know that it's done. The lentils split and the rice is soft. Now this khichdi might need a little bit more water, so I'm just going to feel that out and give it a little bit more water. You sort of get you get a rhythm going when you start making khichdi, where you can eyeball it and be like, okay, that's a little too thick, or oh, that's a little bit too thin. I find that it's pretty intuitive. Okay, so I'm going to add the top back on. Khichdi. All right, as we're waiting for that, any questions? You guys can see this is all clarified. And again, I would just skim off anything that's left on the top once it cools down a little bit more. All righty. Okay, so lassies are all ready. And then you could always like sprinkle a little ginger powder on top if you wanted to. That sounds delicious.
Okay, ginger powder. Do you want some?
Tiny bit. Okay. Just tiny bit. A little bit of ginger goes a long way. So I'm going to ask you guys, this is a little bit of a quiz now. So asking for a friend, when is an appropriate time to use khichdi for a cleanse? Oh, nice, Mackenzie. Anytime. Sure, anytime is a great time. When is some traditional times? Seasonal changes, yeah, really nice. So seasonal changes, especially kitchery cleanses, typically are like right around the fall equinox. So like September 22nd, right around there, you'll start doing like a sort of Panchamaya or Panchakarma cleanse. Watch this guy. Now in the summer, when we go into Pitta season, there's another type of Ayurvedic cleanse that can be really beneficial. And that's just it's a brothy soup. And that brothy soup is made with like, you know, a little bit of kale, a little squash. Again, really bland, no rajastic spices or vegetables. And again, just getting you ready. It's almost like lightening you up a little bit from a pranic perspective when you're moving from the spring to the summer. All right. Can you do Panchakarma cleanse anytime? Yes, you can. It's nice to do it during the seasons. I think Leah would have a more specific like answer for this, but from what I understand, you can really do Panchakarma as you like. And when you go, if you were to go in and actually be seen by an Ayurvedic practitioner or an Ayurvedic doctor and have them perform Panchakarma on you, what treatments they select is going to really be based on where your Prakriti is at that point, right? So if you are Pitta Kapha and you're in a Vata imbalance, then they're going to look at the different procedures and practices, and they're going to select the ones that are going to help to pacify Vata, right?
And also on that note, Leah recently did an office hours where the main topic was cleansing. And so I think it was in the last maybe 2 weeks, and it's a full hour of Leah going through Ayurvedic cleansing and that kind of thing, what time it's appropriate, what steps you want to take.
Any other questions on that?
Any other questions on that, you guys? Okay, so Frankie loves the canned pressure cooker. Way to improvise. Yes, if that's a good improvisation. Frankie says cooking's a big part of her practice.
Awesome. Well, you know, it is a good idea to have, you know, cooking as part of our yoga practice. Because connecting with the foods that we put in our body is an important thing. Like every single thing that we take in is prana. So if we are taking in like TV or radio, we're taking in music, or we're taking in food, we're taking in prana, and we want to not only take in high quality prana, but we want to have a relationship with the prana that we take in, right? And that's why in Ayurveda, they say, you know, not to eat in front of a screen, because you need to be really present with the food that you're eating. The way that you eat is going to be the way that you digest the food. So for example, if I'm sitting on the couch with my husband watching Ghost Hunters, and I'm trying to eat dinner with him, and I'm like sort of haphazardly engaged in my eating, but I'm really focused on this very, you know, like cognitively sort of dissonant concept of like ghosties, then that might be not the best way for me to prepare my body to digest the food, right? So really just looking for optimal digestion, optimal nutrient absorption is like the name of the game. And I'm sure Leah went over with you guys, like, you know, the tongue and stuff like that, and all of that stuff. So Tara and I are habitually, constantly not absorbing our nutrients properly. So we really need to be careful about the way that we are taking in nutrients, the types of nutrients that we're taking in. We need to make sure it's good quality, that we're really being present with our meals, that we're actively engaged in the cooking and preparation of the meals. Because even if I'm getting in like nutrients, but I'm not engaged in the process, my body's not going to absorb it the same way as it would absorb it if I was engaged in the process.
Leah busted out the big tongue diagram pictures.
Oh my.
We had them up on the screen for a long time. We got to take a look at that.
Yeah, I'm always excited in the morning when my tongue has less teeth marks on it, aren't you?
Yeah.
It's always very exciting. It's like, absorbing a little bit more nutrients today. Alrighty, so we're about to pull this khichdi off and we'll do a little bit of tasting. I'll show you how you can dress it and prepare it in a really nice and pleasing way. But, you know, do you guys have any questions about food combining? How would you guys use this with your clients, knowing that we're not telling you to prescribe or to tell your clients how to eat? What are some ways that you would use this to influence the types of practices that you are asking your clients to integrate into their sadhana? One is you can share with your clients, I eat this, or in the seasonal changes, I do this. And I think that's appropriate. I think specifically, and when we get on these calls, and especially anytime we're talking about the yoga therapy training, I always have to come back. It's actually part of my job to come back and say, hey, we can tell people and educate people about these things, but we just don't want to prescribe. That's the key thing. I don't want to say, you should eat this, you should eat that. What we say is, I enjoy this. When the seasons change, I find that it's nice to have khichdi for, you know, as the seasons change, or it's nice to do this or that or this practice. It's a little bit different though when we're talking about, you know, an asana practice or a pranayama practice or a pratyahara practice. I can tell them, I think it would be a good idea if you spend 15 minutes, 20 minutes a day with your legs up the wall. Like, this is a restorative practice. I would like to see you incorporate into your daily routine. So the way I talk about asana and pranayama and some of like the 8 limbs is going to be totally different than the way I talk to them about food and nutrition, because again, that's not my expertise. Now, if you have that expertise, you are a nutritionist, you are a dietitian, you can co-mingle with no problem. You just need to know what your training is in and then apply it in that way. Anybody else? I have seen teachers say, hey, I'm going to do an Ayurvedic cleanse. Anybody who wants to join me can join me. I think that's fine, you know. Then you share the recipes. It's a community thing. You're not saying, eat this for better health or eat this to cleanse your liver. You're just saying, hey, we're all going to, you know, hang out and eat the same thing for a week. I think that's totally fine. And a great way to connect with your clients too on a more personal level. Awesome. All right, well, the khichdi, we just pulled the khichdi off. It's about done. So let's look at how we would put this together. So I like to take just a little bit of coriander, and I like to just chop it up pretty roughly. One of my teachers is Chinnamasta Stiles. She was Manduka Stiles' wife before he passed. He was one of the yoga therapists that you know, helped to establish yoga therapy. And Chinnamasta says, cilantro fixes everything and adds prana to all the things. But you know that some people have a genetic mutation where they taste cilantro as soap, right? My son hates cilantro because it tastes like soap, and it's a genetic thing. So if your clients are like, oh, I hate cilantro, it's okay. You don't need cilantro, but you could do.
You want me to dish it up?
Yeah, so do it. Oh yeah, that's fine. So Tara's gonna dish it up for us. Got some lassi here, got a little ghee. This ghee looks great, by the way. I mean, I'm pretty impressed with this. Like, it's got a nice color to it. It's got nice flavor. It's got all the milk fats are out of it, so that's really nice. Now, traditionally, again, Rajistic things like salt are not a part of an Ayurvedic diet, or low salt, right? But I am not quite 100% Ayurvedic, and I need some salt. So I really like khichdi with a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper. That's my personal thing, especially if you're dehydrated, if you're like trying to rehydrate. Again, we're talking about like, you know, postpartum, or maybe like post-illness, like if you had a GI illness, or maybe you've been like, you know, sick with GI problems for a while, add salt, it's okay. And then, you know, in Ayurveda, we are not shy with the ghee, guys. All the ghee, all the time. So like a big old heaping teaspoon, or maybe even 2, is like totally appropriate. I'm just giving us 1. And then a little bit of cilantro, a A little bit of cilantro. Do you want salt?
Yes, please.
All right. And then it's ready. So super easy to make. Tara, would you like to try? Tell us what you think. So everybody makes their khichdi a little bit different. You know, I think that it can be, oh yeah.
I cannot believe you made it so quickly.
I know, I told you. It's that food, it's that pressure cooker thing. Isn't that good?
Mm-hmm.
And even the ghee's
It
good.
just tastes so different from my. You guys, I do like a lazy man's khichdi, and this is so much better.
Another thing that you can do that is very traditional Ayurvedic and also really good in the winter is rice with like raisins in it.
Oh,
And like making like a sweet sort of raisin, almost porridgey type thing. We've done that too. It's really good though. And the ghee turned out really, it tastes better, doesn't
Oh,
it?
it tastes better. It does.
Fresh ghee is the bomb, guys. Fresh ghee. All right. Yes, so we used lentils today. Yeah, lentils and just a little bit of lentils and a little bit of what's it called?
Basmati.
Basmati. Oh, so it's a good thing somebody asked, Mackenzie said, so the raisins won't count as sweet fruit. So Shiva was just here before we got on the call. You guys know Shiva? Shiva was like, she was reading the Ayurvedic food combining stuff. She's like, what is this talking about? We combine this and that and this and that. So this is, again, this is like a guideline for like Ayurvedic cooking, but I can add raisins to basmati rice and make sort of a sweet, warm, porridgey sort of dish. And it will still be like pleasing, warming kapha, right?
Mm-hmm.
It might not be in alignment with a sattvic diet, right? So that's the distinction. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Never been a lassi fan, guys. Never been a lassi fan. We'll see. See how this goes. That's not bad.
This is not bad.
It's not bad,
Oh,
guys.
I was nervous. I've never
was
had
nervous,
lassi. I thought I was gonna have to conceal a face. Like I was like prepared to just, but it's good. It really is good.
Okay. Yeah, nice.
Oh.
Alrighty, so these are the three sort of like basic staple things that you can bring into your diet, to your practice, to your experience that would definitely add an Ayurvedic influence. Yeah. So I hope you enjoyed our little cooking demo. I'm happy to answer any questions for you guys and, you know, let you guys sort of chat a little bit.
So what, did I miss the part that maybe talked about what we would use instead of ghee?
So
Like
instead
your
of
favorite oil?
So you could use your favorite oil if you'd like. Here's another thing, and I'm not sure if Leah talked about this already, but olive oil is a dripping oil or a drizzling oil. It's not a cooking oil. So you could
Right.
use olive oil. What you don't want to do is heat olive oil because then it becomes rancid. And
Yeah.
rancid oils are associated with ama, which is dis-ease, right, in the body. So we don't want to do that. But I put butter on mine too.
Mm-hmm. The coconut oil would work though. That's what I usually use.
What'd you say,
Is
Karen?
coconut oil is what I usually use.
Coconut oil, and coconut oil is favorited in Ayurveda as well.
And you know, my husband really likes the when I mix the churna that I'll make for him with the dates into it, and he'll eat that like a sweet cereal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yummy.
Yeah. I think the most important thing to really keep in mind when you're transitioning from season to season is what season are you coming out of, what season are you going into. So we are coming out of Pitta season and we're moving into Vata season, right? So how do I ground Vata? How do I ground Vata and Pitta with Kapha, right? So in Vata season, I'm going to have a lot of Kapha foods. It's going to help me to be less anxious, less stressed. I don't know about you guys, but every year I get really stressed and anxious around the fall, right? It's natural because it's also like, it's the time of like, I don't want to say dying, but like the trees lose their leaves, everything gets gray, you know, the flowers aren't there anymore. So there's this like ominous like feeling to it. And then you add the wind and the space and the coolness, all of those vata characteristics, and you get a lot of vata in the mind. And so vata in the mind is like anxiety, right?
Mhm.
And so just eating some things that are grounding and nourishing and warm can help to combat that a little bit. Another thing that you can do in terms of asana when you change seasons is I like to do mandala sequences in Vata season, because I find them to be very grounding. It's interesting because there's a lot of movement in a mandala sequence. So mandala sequencing, you're moving all around the mat. What you do to the left, you do to the right. What you do to the right, you do to the left. And you're creating this pattern. But what's great about it is it takes the Vata mind and it occupies it. So it grounds people. So from like September through December, you'll see me doing more slower paced, but more like unpredictable movement, because I'm trying to get them to focus. In the fall, I'm not going to do like a traditional like vinyasa class where they come in and they do 5 sun salutations, 1 sun B, then we warrior 1, warrior 2, extended side angle, triangle, half moon, vinyasa. I'm not going to do that because they expect it. And then they're going to be in their heads and they're just going through the motions and they're not with me. They're not present, right? But if I give them things they wouldn't expect, right? Or like I'll even do sometimes, I did it yesterday. It was a really good class where I did like Anjaneyasana, and then I did half splits, and then I did Gomukhasana, right? And so that you're expecting to go straight to like a forward fold from there, right? But no, I set you back down and I got you in Gomukhasana, right? And then we did some fun little lyrical stuff, you know, that side plank thing I like to do, and then, you know, back up. But when we keep them on their toes, it sort of can channel that vata, put it someplace, right?
Nice.
Yeah. All right, any other thoughts, comments, questions? Yeah, Ayurveda has a lot of information in it, right? There's a lot of moving parts. And, you know, I find it to be very simple in the sense that there are 5 elements, there are 3 doshas, right? And then there are 3 gunas, and everything revolves around those principles, everything. But there's so many different things that we come into contact with. So I can apply the elements and their qualities and the doshas to literally everything, to the seasons. I can apply it to my food. I can apply it to myself. I can apply it to my mental state of being, my thoughts, my emotional state. Like all of those things can be seen through the lens of the elements, the doshas, and the gunas. What different legumes do you suggest? In terms of what? In terms of for what types of dishes? I think that's Renee that asked the question.
It is. Yeah, I'm thinking like what different, I have so many different dried beans and peas and things that I could think of using. Can they all be used in khichdi, or are there other recipes that are similar to khichdi that could be made during a cleanse with different beans?
So I don't know, and this is actually a little bit, I don't want to say like outside of my lane, but I'll just tell you from my perspective and what I'm thinking, right? I think that khichdi is probably better made with dal, because dal is more easily digestible than like beans, right? Beans can produce more gas, which can be more vata. So I would say there are a lot of really great ways to use beans in Ayurvedic cooking. There's a lot of dals that are just straight dals that use like red beans or kidney beans. So there are many different options. Peas are oftentimes used in like root vegetable dishes where you've got like potatoes and you've got like carrots and, you know, maybe some peas in there and some tomato or something like that. So yeah, there's lots of different ways to use those legumes. I'm just not entirely sure that I would pair them with khichdi.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, when I was in India, they used many types of beans in the dal. Yes. Dal is, yeah, so khichdi is similar to dal, but it's not quite the same thing. Dal does usually have beans in it. Typically, it's kidney beans, but that's not always the case. And dal can also have like cream in it, like coconut cream, or, you know, other different, you know, additives you can put in dal as well. Awesome, guys, awesome. Well, I would love to answer any questions that you guys have. We are here and available.
Last question. This is Renee again, because I'm going to start cooking. I wanted to find out, can I use coconut water in place of water when making khichdi?
I don't see why not. I know that Leah oftentimes uses coconut water, so I think that would be fine. It's going to be a little sweeter though, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's fine though, because it adds that kapha element again. So yeah.
Yeah, great. Thanks.
You're welcome. Beautiful. All right, guys, thank you so much. I see you guys are signing off, so we will see you guys tomorrow. Have a great rest of your afternoon.